Welcome back to North of the Broad. I'm your host, Karen Wyman, coming to you from higher ground on Ladies Island. I'm joined this afternoon by Jonathan Hopp. How are you, Jonathan?
Doing well. Nice to be back again.
I'm glad you're back. We have another wonderful event at for the Pat Conroy Literary Center that is coming up. We want to talk about on March the 4th.
That's right. We've got our second annual March 4th on March 4th out at Penn Center on St. Helena's Island.
Right. And you know, the significance of March 4th, of course, is the fact that that is the date that Pat Conroy passed away just about 2 years ago now, as we lead up to the second anniversary of his death. But before we talk specifically about this event, let's just talk a little bit about his center and what's been happened and what's been created in a little over a year and a half's time.
That's right. We've had just a remarkable response from this community and from Pat's readers around the world about what the Literary Center can mean to them. And by our sort of unofficial count, we had 70 public events in 5 states last year. So it's been remarkable, the number of lives we've been able to reach because of Pat Conroy.
Absolutely, and I know this is probably your third or fourth time being a guest on North of the Broad. We're always happy to have you, but it is astounding to me that you guys are able to put together such incredible programs in a short amount of time that you've been here honoring Pat. But looking forward to what's going to be happening and getting some details from you about March 4th on March 4th.
Well, this was an event we created kind of on the fly last year when we realized we wanted to do something to commemorate Pat's death. And we didn't want a day of mourning. We wanted a day of celebration, of fellowship and learning. And to be able to do something at Penn Center, which meant so much to Pat as a young man and is very near where he's buried now, was just a natural partnership for us.
Yes, sometimes the universe speaks to us, right? And it just sort of falls together.
Indeed,
that way.
Yeah.
Universal message. But you have a number of great people that you have put together for this program. You mentioned to me earlier that you have a naturalist who is part of the program who's going to start the day off for you.
That's right. Drew Lanham is coming from Clemson University. He's a naturalist, a poet, and a memoirist, and we had him part of last year's event as well. And he's going to lead a nature walk of Penn Center starting at 10 o'clock that morning on March 4th.
It sounds like it's going to be a beautiful way to start off the day. And after you finish the nature walk, leading into your keynote speaker, or your is Nikki, who's got some history with Pat before she came into being a poet in her own right.
That's right. We've got Nikki Finney as our keynote speaker. She's a National Book Award winning poet, probably one of the best known and most accomplished writers in South Carolina right now. Her father was South Carolina's first African-American Chief Supreme Court Justice. So Nikki, like Pat himself, is very much immersed in the history of this state and its potential for change.
Yeah, I mean, if you read any of Pat's book and can look back during those early years and those early times and what he was faced with, you know, as a teacher, you know, and as a writer, we see how much this area and how much our community has changed since that time, and how much he contributed to that. So, you know, you talk about the Penn Center and obviously how historic that is, and that Pat, you know, is buried right down the road. It certainly was a significant place for him.
It was. His teacher, Gene Norris, took him to Penn Center when Dr. Martin Luther King was out there.
Writing.
So Pat, as a 16-year-old, got to meet Martin Luther King Jr. on a street that's now named for Dr. King. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Touching sort of your heart and your soul, and certainly an inspiring visit or an opportunity for sure. So leading up to this event on March 4th, the center is also holding another event, is that correct?
That's right. Out on Hilton Head Island, we're leading a writing retreat that's focusing on memoir. And the instructor for that, Jessica Handler, learned creative writing from Pat Conroy in Atlanta. It's hard to find a writer in the South who doesn't have a Pat Conroy connection.
Right? It's sort of like we should have that game, you know, the 6 degrees of Pat Conroy.
Yes.
I think that there's a challenge for you guys at the Literary Center. I think you could easily come up with a board game and make all those connections.
We could make it 3 degrees of separation. I don't think we would need 7 for most writers.
No, not for most writers.
Yeah.
But certainly a lot to look forward to on March the 4th and other things coming up for the Literary Center. If people want to see what's coming up down the road, Jonathan, what's the best way to get that information?
The best way is to go to our website, which we're updating all the time, which is simply patconroyliterarycenter.org. And we also maintain a very active Facebook feed, as you've probably seen.
An Instagram feed.
And Instagram, and monthly newsletters as well. So there's a lot of new events coming up, but we announce all of them well in advance.
I know you do. Thank you so much for being a guest with us today and talking about just another wonderful event and tribute to Pat Conroy. Thanks thanks for all that you guys are doing at the Literary Center.
Thank you,
You're
Karen.
welcome. We'll be right back with our next guest on North on the Broad.